The Call of the Wild. The Call of the Wild is directed by Chris Sanders and stars Harrison Ford and Karen Gillan from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and among others. And this is based on a novel of the same name from 1903 by Jack London, and it's a film that deals with a Saint Bernard Scotch Collie mixed dog that named Buck that's basically living in California with his master one day, and then one night he gets kidnapped by someone, and then he gets aboard like this freighter that's going all the way to Yukon in Canada. And when he gets to this small town, he comes across Harrison Ford's character, and among other people there. And basically, he starts. It's similar to like other similar movies where you have like a dog trying to find its master, so to speak. And in this, it pretty much deals with like three different like storylines that go on pretty much in the movie, and it deals with
the dog was kidnapped because of a dog slave trade back going when they were doing the New Frontier with Alaska and Canada up in the Yukon area. It was like the New Frontier type thing. It
was during the Klondike Gold Rush. And so basically, as you see in the trailer, it becomes a series of adventures that the dog gets into, and then as he eventually comes across Harrison Ford's character again throughout the movie, who befriends him and starts to get close to him. So yeah. Now here's a little backstory. Now this is a film that, again, we said in some of our last videos, we were going to go check it out when it came out in theaters, but due to timing and due to personal things, we just didn't really get to see it. And this was actually early in the year where it was getting like it was actually reported that the film had cost so much to the point that it lost like quite a lot, and it hardly did. It basically lost a lot of money for the studio. And this was the first film that 20th Century Fox decided to rebrand under their current name, which is under 20th Century Studios.
Yeah, see, I don't know why this movie costs a lot, because we'll get into details here in a minute on that. But getting a little backstory, I saw the previews to this film, and I wouldn't say that it was the type of movie I was going to be hyped for. But we see these man's best friend type movies a lot. Set in wilderness, so I just chalk it up as okay, it's just another probably going to be a decent watch. And one of the things, seeing Harrison Ford finally done with Star Wars, he's just wants to branch out and just like softer roles, and that's something I'm interested in seeing him do instead of being stereotyped with Han and the upcoming Indiana Jones film. And him being in it kind of got me like, okay, I'll give it a watch. But I will say the one thing that bothered me, and we will get in our cons on this, was the CGI in the trailers looked fucking awful. And I knew right then and there, January release, bad CGI.
Well, it came out in February, toward the end of February.
Oh, yeah, February, my bad. But still, the January, February is usually the dump months when it comes to these type movies. And we had Doolittle that came out previous month, and I was like, okay, I see in this trend now, we're getting these little family-oriented movies having to use animals and CGI. I'm like, okay. And, it just goes to show, like, movies in the past with these men's best friend, the wilderness and all that. It's a shame that Netflix just released something last year, and it's real. The wilderness and the animals look realistic in that. I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen scenes of it.
It's called Togo. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting how to hear that this movie costs a lot of money, probably Harrison Ford mostly, and hearing Netflix releasing shit a lot cheaper, and it looks so fucking authentic and real. And I've seen other movies from the 90s that still hold up today, like Homeward Bound is one of them that comes to mind. That looks like real. I mean, because they used real animals. So hearing that they spent a big budget on this, like it was some master big, it's not Disney, but it's Disney-ish type of level.
Yeah.
I was wondering what the fuck did they spend their money on? So
Yeah. Apparently.
getting into
Yeah.
the movie, upon seeing the movie, I called it. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's okay, but there's a lot of problems with this.
Yeah, I had the same, pretty much the same, expectations going into it, and it pretty much had that same way after upon seeing it. And I looked it up earlier too, and apparently the movie costs roughly between 125 to 150 million, and it's now lost around 50 to 100 million world. It only grossed 107 million worldwide. So that's quite a loss for the
Explain
studio.
off topic for a second. Explain to me why this and Doolittle spent so much fucking money to make, and you get like Lee Winnell can fucking make a movie that looks like it was made on a $300 million budget and only spends like 15 million. Man,
Well,
if the don't
because
get rid of them.
all the production, because get this, I also looked up here, the film was not shot on location. So everything that's in the film is all in a studio. So the extensive use of the effects and the locations, that you can see where the budget went.
We're gonna get our cons on that because that was one of my big pet peeves of this. So getting into my pros, it's cool to see Harrison Ford. In something different that isn't Star Wars, it isn't Indiana Jones, and so on and so forth like that. So for what it is worth, his age, it was cool seeing him go family oriented and do stuff like this. Granted, I got a pro about his character later, or a con that I have a fucking issue with, and it has a lot to do with the marketing on this. So, the story, man, I'm a pro con on the story too, because the story is, I'm going to narrow it down to some of my pros on this. The last 30 minutes of the movie picked up. And I actually enjoyed that. And actually, if we would have had the whole fucking movie like that, this could have been a very emotional ride film. But no, they took a different turn than what we all expected. And we'll get in our cons on that for a second.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I really enjoy Harrison Ford's performance in this. It's great to see him, do something a little bit more toned down than like as far as his more serious stuff. His more like iconic roles that he's done and just branching out, so to speak. He, I think, really carried this film the best because because every time that he was on screen, he brought a lot of heart. He brought a lot of emotion. His chemistry with Buck, I thought, was so heartwarming, and it showed a lot of compassion, how much he cared for him, and how they care for each other, and how to rely on each other.
Yeah, exactly. They cared for each other, and I agree with you. The chemistry between him and the dog are good. It's just a shame that you watch the last 30 minutes, and you're like, man, we could have had a bigger fucking impact if this was the whole fucking movie. Why was this the last 30 fucking minutes? It makes no sense, and we'll get. But their chemistry was great. The whole man's best friend storyline, the whole like wilderness, no matter what it is, what movie it is, and if it's got cons or if I like things about it, that I still end up thinking that's one of those type of genres that never gets old. They can come up with something exciting, and the ending too. I will say. It's pro con too because it's a wasted potential, but it's pretty emotional towards the end, and I get its meaning of what it was doing, going for with the whole discovering, Buck discovering his ancestors and shit like that and all that crap. I get where they're going on that. It's kind of hard because this is like one of those films that isn't a really bad movie, but isn't a good movie at all either. So it's like 50-50. So do you got any more pros?
I'll also say, give it in parts with it. There are some interesting interesting locations that they go to. From what they use with it, what it's rendered with, as far as the actual cinematography wise. It does have that really good like winter feel that I like in the whole wilderness. Even though some of it is very, very noticeable CGI, there are still some parts where it does feel, legitimate. And I
I
did
will say,
enjoy also the the uh, the whole thing where it's having to deal with like Buck actually, going through like certain like the certain rituals that you're saying, like finding himself and things like that. I think that was it was good, and there was potential there. I think that they could have went with because, I mean, it will fall into our cons here in a minute. If you took someone like, say, Jon Favreau, or a director that was able to use CGI in a very realistic way, like they did with The Lion King last year, I think that would have really helped a lot better with the way that they were going with this story. Because if you notice in the animal movements they do, it looks like they were going to go for like really something, like it's a real life, human being type level of the dog. And it really I wish the CGI could have been a lot better for that, you know?
exactly. And again, pro con on that. But another thing, like you were talking about now, talking into pros and stuff, I will say that the landscape of when it wasn't snowing, like towards like the last 30 minutes where it's kind of spring, it does kind of, it's rendered very well to where it looks like they're on location. I don't know what it was with the snow atmosphere, because with the CGI, why it looks so
Yeah.
horrible when snowy world, and then when it was in spring, whenever we take a big jump in time where he's with Harrison Ford, I just felt like the wilderness looked a lot better without the snow. It looked like they really were at the location.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, like you said, the whole finding himself and the whole man's best friend, and like how, they start caring for one another, really it's heartwarming. The only problem is now here we get into our cons. Let me get my biggest scrap out of the way, because this right here, I believe I bitched about a film earlier this year. And one of the things that pisses me off, now there's a difference between tricking somebody in a good way and tricking somebody in a bad way. This film leans towards tricking us in a bad way. We see the poster and we saw all the trailers, and it shows nothing but Harrison Ford and the dog. Harrison Ford, other aside for a 2-minute scene and then a other 2-minute scene, isn't in this movie until the last 30 minutes of the film. This movie actually takes a different twist, because I thought it was a survival film. It's not. When the dog is caught at the beginning, he's sold to dog slave, kind of like a dog slave trade, not slave trade, slave trade, where they used them kind of like use horses to get around, and they use them up in Yukon. You've seen them, sledding and shit. And we actually followed 2 other characters that didn't even know existed because they weren't in the trailers. And it's this one African guy. I don't know where he's from. He's got kind of like a African or Jamaican accent,
Uh,
and
that's the guy from X-Men Days. He was one of the mutants from X-Men Days of Future Past. The one that played from the beginning in the future scenes.
okay, him, and then there's this Alaskan woman, and the whole hour is the dog. Well, first he starts out kind of like low tier, and he befriends this the African guy and the Alaskan girl, and their job is to go around the whole area delivering mail to towns far away from each other.
Yeah.
And it's about how he's trying to improve his business because he's been late at doing the mail. So he adopts, pretty much takes this dog under his wing. Starts out kind of like a back dog, and you can kind of see like this beef going on with
Mm-hmm.
this one dog, and it's kind of like the dog that the wolf is like the leader, and he's kind of like against the dog, and you can kind of get this whole Lion King vibe with Scar with this guy, and there's like this. My point is my con in this is it is different from the trailers completely and from the posters. We follow this African guy and this girl and these fucking dogs, sleigh dogs, and this beef between him and this wolf. And none of this was promoted in the trailers. I'm like, when's Harrison Ford coming in this movie? There he is. 2-minute scene. That's it. Okay, what the fuck? And here we are, hour in the movie, still not here. Then he fucking finally comes. I'm like, there we go. Okay. Now my other problem. Why does this feel like two separate movies? Because that part with the sledding is about kind of made me think of White Fang. You remember that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Thing. Kind of remind me of that with the and then another issue they were stuffing in all these the like dilemmas they get into, like an avalanche, falling through ice, all those shit that can happen in the wild is stuffed in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it feels very rushed. I noticed that a lot, and not just that, but it seems to me like it's almost like you have like little mini. It's almost like this was structured like an anthology type like TV series. Only if Buck was like basically the one that ties them all together, where he's going from them, and then he goes to on this sledding with these next group of people, which becomes the typical villain like we see in all these fucking movies. And believe it or not, he's played by the guy that played off Beauty and the Beast, the remake, and then becomes the stereotypical villain that wants to abuse animals and shit like that. And I'm like, do we really need to have this fucking character?
Yeah, like Justin said earlier, this movie relies a lot on the gold rush times, so the villain is really after gold. And
Yeah.
I don't get his sense of anger because he's really mean to these animals and he wants to kill Harrison Ford so fucking bad. For what? Because he told you don't do this. You might steal gold, man. There's so much fucking gold out there. Why?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's about to steal the only treasure known to man, like in one little spot. So I didn't really get that. And you're right about the whole anthology thing. I get it, people. Some people might criticize us for saying, well, Eddie and Justin, it's supposed to be showing you a long journey. It still doesn't make any sense because, like you said, it's in so many different parts. And then finally, the reason why I watched the movie was Harrison Ford and the companionship happens in the last 30 minutes. So it becomes a totally different movie because abruptly, when we're with our African character and that girl, after going through all these survival shit they've had to go through, he abruptly has to return to the South, and she goes wherever the fuck she goes, and they no longer have a job.
Well, yeah, and what's weird is that the last 30 minutes when Buck is actually, he comes across a female wolf or husky or whatever, that's a dog or wolf or dog or whatever, and he starts to he starts to do a lot of things that I actually that he was actually doing earlier that I was actually getting into, but it worked a lot better in these scenes because keep in mind the shit that's going on between him and the dog and that segment was actually involved with Harrison Ford's character, and that was the stuff I cared about. So it was just weird that you went from the beginning, which was supposed to be built up to that, but the thing was that it really was distracting because of all the stuff I didn't care about.
Yeah, there's so much going on in this film because it was very jumpy with the whole, like, when he's kidnapped and he's going through all this stuff and you think he's going to be with these abusers for a while, and then he suddenly gets this African guy and the girl takes him under his wing and becomes a different storyline. And then they go through the whole survivalist thing and not really survivalist thing, just getting to point A to point B with their mail, and they are run into avalanches and shit like that. And then it just abruptly cuts out of that, and then it goes finally to the Harrison Ford storyline. So it's like, okay, editing wise, this is real bad. Another complaint is, I predicted this, the CGI. This film might be worse than the CGI than on some parts than Dr. Dolittle. And that's pretty fucking sad because that CGI I thought was real bad. This movie used 100% laziness of CGI computer generated. They didn't even attempt to get a fucking dog on set, kind of render him mixed with CGI and practical. This was a fucking cartoon fucking dog. This looks so bad. This dog looked terrible. No offense, I loved his demeanor, Buck, but just watching him on screen and when he runs and stuff, I'm like, oh my God.
It's almost like
so
seeing
bad.
early, you know what it is, right? It's almost like,
here it is. When it's so bad, when you know your CGI is bad, when your character stands still, usually it's supposed to help where you're not moving and it makes it look real. It looked even fucking worse.
well, it's sad because you know what it reminds me of, right? There were parts in the CGI when I was seeing not only Buck but also the other animals. I felt like I was watching an early like a PS3 video game cutscene because the way they were rendered. I was like, ooh, that's some pretty that we're like way past that generation of graphics. We need to update.
Like I stated earlier, when they weren't in the snowy atmosphere with Harrison Ford, when it was in spring, it looked like he went out. They shot it out in the woods. It looked real. But most hour of this movie, of course, takes place in the snow. The mountains, the forest, the snow. You could tell this is a fucking. You could tell that was snow they were going through. Everything looked like a fucking set, and it just bothered the shit out of me. And
the bear looked pretty bad too. And I was like, okay, I understand that they use CGI for like the Revenant and mixed in with some, you know, a lot of practicals, but it's sad to see like other effects too, like on this bear that they come across, and I was like, ooh, that looks even worse than the dogs.
Yeah, it's just the animals, all the other animals, like the rabbit and all that. Everything was this movie. This is pure laziness of Hollywood. This is what people bitch about when it comes to how Hollywood is selling themselves out to being very cheap. And this is exactly the fucking perfect example. There's so many cheap movies, like a Netflix movie, who spent maybe $27 million to make, and it looked fucking real. And they were able still to capture the right demeanors of the man's best friend vibe. This one, I think what they were doing, I see what they were trying to do with Buck, but it felt very unrealistic at point. Like he was breaking steel and all this shit. I'm wondering, is this dog got some superpowers? Another problem. What is with that fucking ghost wolf we keep seeing? I do not get it. Is it a metaphor for he's in the wild, he's part of them, ancestor stuff? It felt
I did too. I was curious, like, okay, that's, I mean, unless it's some type of like, unless it's some type of tribe or something I don't know about that they reference the movie or something like that. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention much. I mean, not that I wasn't paying attention, but I'm just saying I don't remember them referencing anything like that. But this whole thing, am I supposed to be in the impression that, okay, maybe he's, you know, just seeing like, he's supposed to have like, you know, motivation to, you know, find himself in the wild or something? I mean, I guess that's what they were going for, but I can't tell.
It's really, it was done bad. I get you. This had that wolf thing and the whole finding himself ancestors, giving him strength, giving him the push to be motivated can only work, but it was written so poorly. It was written like it was just slapped on there just to add more something in the movie to keep it from being boring, which unfortunately I gotta admit, in the first hour I was bored a little bit with this film. Not terribly bored. I was bored where I was able to watch the movie and play on my phone, and I hate when I have to do that, but it was hard. It was a chore for a little bit, and when they get to the Harrison Ford scene is whenever I put the phone down, and I felt like I was finally where I was supposed to be at in the movie. And I would say that can you think of any other little issues you had other than
I mean,
it's sad that ending was so emotional, but you can't feel it if the whole movie was something else. And that was just sad because it was a really good emotional scene, but I didn't feel anything.
I know it's like if you would have done this structured out, like basically if you would have structured the movie as just a regular maybe 30-minute or maybe 20-30 minute segment of a, let's say an anthology like television series, maybe it could work. You know, if you're going for something like that.
This could have maybe went, if this movie would have been about Harrison Ford and the dog and showed us the whole journey, maybe that, and scratch the whole fucking sledding bullshit and him having to work for a postal service. whenever he sees Harrison Ford on the fucking boat at the beginning of the movie, that should have been, some kind of vibe where they are together and we see this whole journey of the movie of them getting to, because Harrison Ford's got a good purpose where he's going. And there's a purpose where I don't want to spoil anything, but it has to do something in the past with his son.
Yeah.
And his purpose it would have been better if that would have been the whole movie, and in him and Buck get this friendship and they go on this journey together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this could have been a whole, but they waited only for the last 30 minutes. And that right there, this was a waste of potential, but the 30 minutes does save the movie from being a disaster. It does. I will admit, it saved the movie heavily on that. So I don't have to go in more detail on this. I will say that it was about what I expected, but a tiny bit disappointing at the same time. So with that being said, I'm going to go with a low average Joe in the Film Phreeks meter.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's what I was going to go with too. A low average Joe on the Film Phreeks meter as well. It had potential. It was a disappointment, but that 30 minutes, yes, it definitely at least saved it. And what's interesting, off topic, this director has actually had some experience with other films in the animation department. He's actually he's best known for directing a lot of other Disney films and DreamWorks movies too, like Lilo and Stitch, The Croods, How to Train a Dragon, and all them. So this was his first live action film that the director has made. So I can see where the CGI just wasn't on his keys, so to speak.
It seemed like a lot of the animals on here look like they would come out of animation. That's how badly CGI they were. They look like they came from an animation. So it's like he was still stuck on that trend, but trying to make a live action didn't blend very well. So yeah.
Fair enough. For those of you who have also seen The Call of the Wild, let us know in the comments what you thought about it, and we'll be seeing you in our next review. Stay safe.